Tổng trưởng phụ trách giảm thiểu băng đảng tội phạm và an ninh biên phòng, ông Bill Blair và dân biểu liên bang Julia Zerowitz, khu vực Devonport hôm thứ Năm ngày 29 tháng 8, lúc 11 giờ sáng đã tổ chức buổi hội luận bàn tròn tại Toronto Police Service ở số 11 Division 2054 Devonport để trình bày các vấn đề liên quan đến luật hợp thức hóa việc sử dụng, sở hữu cần sa, an toàn cộng đồng và nhập cư tị nạn tại biên giới Hoa Kỳ và Canada. Tham dự buổi mạn đàm có đại diện Thời báo, Việt TV và các cơ quan truyền thông sắc tộc. Sau phần giới thiệu sơ lược về vai trò và trách nhiệm của Tổng trưởng trong chính phủ đương nhiệm của Đảng Tự do và nghị trình buổi hội luận của dân biểu liên bang Julia, ông Bill Blair nhận định về truyền thông sắc tộc. Canada là một đất nước đa dạng, đa văn hóa. Các cơ quan ngôn luận sắc tộc là nhịp cầu thông tin giúp chính phủ vượt qua rào cản ngôn ngữ, chuyển tải tin tức đến các cộng đồng địa phương. Tỷ lệ thanh thiếu niên Canada sử dụng cần sa cao hơn các nước khác trên thế giới, cho nên chính phủ liên bang đã đưa ra giải pháp hợp pháp hóa sở hữu và sử dụng cần sa để ngăn chặn cần sa đến tay các trẻ vị thành niên, hạn chế sự tăng trưởng của thị trường cần sa bất hợp pháp do các băng đảng tội phạm có tổ chức khống chế.
I think a lot of people saw that just simply as legalizing cannabis. But I will tell you, if that's all we had done, would not have done a great service to this country. But that is not, by any stretch of the imagination, all we did. We lifted the criminal prohibition to enable us to regulate this substance, to regulate every aspect of its production, its distribution, and its consumption. And we were motivated not by revenue, which many other jurisdictions talk about how much money they could make. We were motivated by three very important things. We knew we needed to do a better job of protecting our kids. We had the highest rates of cannabis use among our kids of any country in the world. And the cannabis that our kids were buying, they were buying from drug dealers in their neighborhood. There are a lot of harms associated to that activity. We also know that organized crime was making billions of dollars from that enterprise. And I've been fighting organized crime my whole life. And organized crime doesn't do anything good in our communities with the money that the easiest profit they ever made from the sale of marijuana to our kids in our communities. We also knew that what Canadian adults were consuming was unregulated, untested, unsafe, contained dangerous chemicals, and they had no idea what its dosage was. All of those circumstances were unacceptable. The criminal prohibition that we had relied on to control this substance for a century just wasn't working. And so I was given the responsibility by the Prime Minister to, first of all, go out and get the best evidence and the best advice we could on how to do this right, based on those public policy goals of protecting our kids, displacing organized crime, and protecting the health of Canadians. And then to develop a regulatory framework to bring this situation that was out of control into control. And we worked hard on that. We were cautious and careful. And some people have complained we've been slow, but I think Canadians want us to be cautious and careful and take the time to do it right. I will tell you, somebody said to me, isn't there a bit of a contradiction for me? I've spent my life in law enforcement, and now I'm legalizing and regulating the substance. And I just simply remind people, I've actually spent my life in public safety and protecting kids and communities. And I believe very firmly this is the right way to protect our children. This is the right way to displace organized crime in our communities, and it's the right way to protect adult Canadians. And I think one of the most important things we accomplished last October when we introduced the new legislation for cannabis, we stopped criminalizing another generation of young Canadians. And the harm of those criminal records was not insignificant to our children and to their future. And so I strongly believe that's truly one of the accomplishments. We stayed true to our public policy commitments to Canadian people, but this is what we would focus on, and we focused on that. And I'm proud to deliver it.
Thực thi luật hình sự đối với việc sử dụng cần sa sẽ ảnh hưởng đến tương lai của một số thanh thiếu niên Canada, và sau một thời gian nghiên cứu thận trọng thì chính phủ đã ban hành luật mới về cần sa. Ông Bill Blair nói thêm.
We actually now have, today for the first time, an enforceable regime to protect our kids. What I mean by that, a year ago, if a cop saw a 16-year-old kid on the corner with marijuana, they had two choices. They could do nothing, or they could charge the child criminally and give that kid a criminal record for the rest of their life. That was the choice, not just for kids, but for any Canadians. Over the last 15 years, we've seen the police laying fewer and fewer charges because that penalty was disproportionate to the offense. The courts didn't want to prosecute it or convict for it, and we saw the disparity and the injustice of that very serious penalty for that offense. But today, the police have a new tool. They have new regulations that we've brought in. The police can seize the drug. They can issue a ticket. They can administer a fine. They can take the kid home to the parents. They can do all of those things now, which are far better for the kid, but the kid doesn't get a criminal record. I have to tell you, from my perspective as a former police officer, that's a very good thing. The police can now enforce an absolute prohibition to protect our children, but they don't have to harm our children in the process by giving them a criminal record. And we created a new offense, a 14-year maximum penalty offense for trafficking to children. So for people who do continue to sell to our kids, we've created a new offense to put them in jail. And so it's enforcement and competition in the marketplace and smarter regulation. And so I think it's working.
Về vấn đề tị nạn tràn qua biên giới phía Nam, Tổng trưởng cho biết ngay từ lúc xảy ra tình trạng nhập cảnh xin tị nạn tại biên giới Mỹ-Canada, thì cảnh sát liên bang RCMP và lực lượng biên phòng CBSA, Canada Border Service Agency, đã được điều động đến biên giới Hoa Kỳ-Canada để kiểm soát an ninh, đảm bảo rằng không có bất kỳ tội phạm nào được nhập cảnh vào Canada.
Now, there are other issues that are arising as well. I'm also responsible and happy to talk, if people wish to talk about it, for bringing under control the issue of irregular migration of people who are seeking asylum into Canada. There were a number of concerns raised in 2017. Frankly, as a result of some public policy decisions made south of the border, people began to come to the Canadian border to seek asylum. And initially, we had to respond, and so we responded by sending the RCMP and CBSA to make sure that there was no safety and security threat. I want to assure all Canadians, there is no safety and security threat. Every single person who crosses that border, whether they do it regularly or irregularly, is stopped, detained, investigated, and determined. If there's any criminality or national security threat, they're not allowed in. We deal with their criminality, but there is nobody allowed into the country who poses a risk to Canadians. 40% of the people who've come are actually children, and they're not scary. They're just little kids, and so. We've worked hard, first of all, to make sure that there was no threat. But I listened to Canadians as well as Julie did. People were concerned about fairness, about the rules. And they wanted to make sure Canadian law was properly being upheld and applied, and that we would manage those processes efficiently and effectively. And so we went to work. Prime Minister gave me the job last summer. We quickly went to work. We've doubled the capacity of the Immigration Refugee Board to do those hearings, because the longer it takes, the less fairness in the system. And so we're now doing twice as many hearings in a year as we were doing previously. And we made a big investment in hiring more people and getting more resources into that process. That works really well. But it's not just a matter of doubling the capacity of the system to handle it. We also looked at how do we reduce the number of people that were crossing irregularly. And I want to share with you that we've achieved a great level of success there. We've reduced by nearly half the number of people that were crossing since 2017, when we had the big surge in the summer. Significantly fewer people. It now averages right across the entire 9,000 kilometer border of Canada, about 50 people a day will cross our border irregularly. I contrast with the United States, where we're talking in thousands each day. So the numbers are manageable. Everybody that comes across is probably investigated. And then under our law, under Canadian law, the laws that we've passed as a country, and have been in place for decades, everyone is entitled to a hearing. We just want to make sure they have that hearing in a timely way. And because we are also Canadians, and Canadian country, and we believe in fairness, we don't put these people out in the street, we don't detain them with their children, we put them in shelter. Temporary shelter. We've been working really close with the cities, and the City of Toronto in particular. I've been working very closely with the mayor and making sure that they have the resources they need, because we placed some burden on the city resources for shelter. And so we have brought several $1 million, and I'll say several $1 million, and later this week we'll be announcing another 17, but then that'll bring us up to almost $60 million that we provided to the City of Toronto to help them with the costs of sheltering these people. We also made sure that if a kid gets sick, he's going to get to see a doctor, so they have access to health treatment. That had actually been taken away from them in the previous government. We restored that, because we're not going to let a child be sick without having access to medical services. We're giving them work permits so that they can support themselves as quickly as possible and actually begin to contribute to their community. And as I've said, we've speeded up the amount of time and those resources. We went down into the United States. We met with all of these different community organizations and NGOs who support these people in the U.S. We gave them better information about the Canadian justice system and the immigration system. that has been very helpful in encouraging people not to make the wrong choice, to seek refuge in Canada if they don't really need our protection. And we also started working with the U.S. in particular with overseas countries and the issuance of their visas. All of those measures have been really effective, and we've reduced the number of people coming. We've improved the efficiency of the processes whereby we determine a person's eligibility to stay. I remind myself in that process of the contribution that refugees and immigrants have made to this country. The country is built on immigration. And if we look at the contribution that, I remind myself, I'm of Irish background. In 1847 here in Toronto, the population of Toronto was about 20,000 people. 34,000 Irish people arrived in 1847, more than double the population. They were fleeing famine and death, and they came to this country, and they were welcomed by Canadians. They were welcomed by the people of Toronto. They became part of the city of Toronto. And overnight, the population more than doubled. I can only imagine the challenge of that, because many of those people were also suffering illness. The cholera epidemic was raging at the time. And I think for me, that's sort of the beginning of a long and proud history of compassion and well-managed immigration system that has built this country.
Đối với tình trạng bạo lực có sử dụng vũ khí ở địa phương, thì Tổng trưởng cũng cho rằng lực lượng biên phòng CBSA kiểm soát rất chặt chẽ biên giới để ngăn chặn vũ khí bất hợp pháp được chuyển lậu từ Mỹ vào Canada.
I thought about this a lot when I announced on Monday that we were giving $65 million to municipal police services through the province of Ontario to do the important work that those services do in preventing, enforcing, and prosecuting those offenders. But I frankly was worried, and I'm so glad you asked the question, that people think then that's all you're doing. We're doing that because it's necessary and it's important and it needs to be done. Oh my goodness, that's not all we're doing. And for example, there are 58,000 housing units in Toronto community housing in Toronto. The City of Toronto got them in 1998, but we didn't get any money to keep them in good repair. That housing is really starting to get in bad condition. And so we came to the city. The city's putting over $300 million in it. We're putting into $1.2 billion. We're going to fix those places up. And people say, well, how does that keep us safe? If you live in a neighborhood that's really run down and there's a lot of, disrepair, the windows are broken, the HVAC system doesn't work, the public areas are uninhabitable. A child growing up in that neighborhood doesn't really feel that they have the same opportunity, the same hope that any other child would feel. And so we're going to do that. Through the Canada Child Benefit, we've raised 300,000 children out of poverty. Growing up in poverty really affects a child's ability to reach their full potential. And they have extraordinary potential. And so lifting those kids out of poverty, I think it's one of the most important things we've done as a government. Mental health services are really important. And we delivered health services through the provinces, but we've brought a great deal of additional money into making sure that people have access to mental health treatment and services in their communities, because that's a significant factor. We're also making investments in jobs, because jobs are also part of hope and part of prosperity, and helping people who want to succeed. Like those things are really important. We've also been making some, I think, appropriate changes to the way in which we administer the criminal justice system. I'll go back to cannabis for a second. We know that if you grew up in a poor neighborhood, a racialized neighborhood, or an indigenous neighborhood, there was a lot more enforcement of the cannabis laws in those neighborhoods. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. But that's the reality, that those kids were far more likely to get a criminal record. And when that kid got a criminal record, they didn't have access to pardons because it was expensive. And so they would carry the burden of that for the rest of their life. And it would limit their opportunity to get a job, or to get decent housing, or to live a full life. And so we've said, not only are we going to stop criminalizing those kids, but we've gone to those same kids that have got that criminal record and say, pardons are now going to be made available to you at no charge. It was $621, we're waiving the fee. You used to have to wait 5 years, you don't even have to do that. We want to help those kids get back on the right track and back on their feet. That's the right thing to do. And so we're trying very hard to do the right thing. It's tough when you announce money for policing and enforcement, and people say, well then, why aren't you doing these other things? Oh, but we are. We are in housing, we are in jobs, we are in prosperity, we are in social justice, we are in health services. I said earlier, there's 1,000 things you have to do right. And we're committed to doing all of them as well as we possibly can.
Buổi hội luận bàn tròn với Tổng trưởng phụ trách băng đảng tội phạm và an ninh biên giới đã kết thúc lúc 2 giờ sau phần giải đáp các câu hỏi của báo giới. Theo luật sở hữu và sử dụng cần sa được chính phủ liên bang ban hành vào ngày 17 tháng 10, thì người dân Ontario trên 19 tuổi có thể mua cần sa qua các trang mạng của hệ thống Ontario Cannabis Store. Và các hãng trồng cần sa được cấp giấy phép sản xuất chỉ được phép có một cửa hàng duy nhất. Tuy nhiên, tỉnh bang không giới hạn số lượng cửa hàng tư nhân kinh doanh cần sa. Lái xe trong khi phê cần sa sẽ bị phạt nặng và sẽ không khoan nhượng đối với những tài xế phạm luật